Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us and coming back and being a part of our study as we do our Battle Buddy series, the Battle Buddy, our study on the Armor Bearer. Thank you for being a part of this. You may have noticed, you say hi?
Hi.
So, two big things. The first one being that you may notice there was not a release last week, and that primarily had to do the with the spring break of our school system and just people being out of town and not having an in-person service led to that being a free week as well. And so thank you for your patience and waiting 2 weeks for this. The other big thing that is really on the nose is I am joined by a certain young man today. And so my battle buddy today is my boy and one of my boys. And so I'm really excited that he is joining with us. And so it should be really good. So if you're watching the video portion, and you will enjoy seeing him go back and forth all over the place. If you're listening just the audio, you may catch. Oh, really? You may catch the occasional blurb that he will put out there. Last time when we were together in our previous episode of the Battle Buddy, we discussed Nehemiah and what he did with getting armor bearers to work together and why that's so important about coming together and working together as a team and how you can have multiple armor bearers meeting multiple roles all within the same organization. And that's a really good one. So if you haven't had a chance to review that or listen to it in the first place, at the end of this video, there will be a playlist option that has all of the entries in the Battle Buddy series. And so if you haven't watched and missed one or two of those, you can feel free to catch those or review them as well. And they're very rewarding. So once again, thank you for being a part of this. Um, Now, today we're going to kind of we're going to talk about an issue.
Be quiet.
Be quiet, he says. Okay. We're going to talk about an issue that we kind of danced around for a little bit. We kind of went through it there a few times, and it's kind of a quiet thing, but it makes big waves in society in regards to the armor bearer. And we kind of discussed this a little bit in detail, but I want to kind of take a particular approach of it today. We've been calling this series the Battle Buddy, and for a rightly so, for a reason. It is an appropriate label for the relationship that we've been given, the relationship we have with one another, those who serve under us, those who serve before us, those who serve alongside us. Calling the armor bearer series the Battle Buddy is a very appropriate term, and so it is a really important thing. That is when one of us is in a battle and facing trials, hardships, etc., difficult seasons, or going through trials of various kinds. This is something that when someone comes alongside us, when someone comes alongside and joins in our trial with us, someone who comes alongside us in our battle, they become a buddy, and so that is the idea of the battle buddy and the armor bearer coming hand in hand together. And so this is the buddy who joins us. Now, there's something amazing when two or three or more are gathered into a situation. It brings with it a kind of a quiet strength. It doesn't need to be loud and proud, but when two or three are gathered, there's something important that two or three will have in a place, two or three or more will have in a situation versus just one. Okay, so getting that place where, when someone does it by themselves versus when they are with a particular team of individuals, it is very important. So we're going to open up our Bibles, and I want to read just one verse first and foremost. We're going to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 4. And Josiah, can you read verses 9 through 12 for us? You want to read that one? Can you read that for me? What's that say? So he can't read yet, but he is getting there. So I will read for him. Ecclesiastes 4:9 through 12 says two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lay down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And so right there we get this wonderful description of this armor bearer thing right here. This strength and accountability and an unction that that you can have when someone someone working on their own will never understand. We having 2 or 3 and giving us that additional strength, that additional unction, that accountability, even having that value, it cannot be understated. It can't be undervalued. It is a very vital thing for us. And so to really show this principle of 2 or 3 coming together and being strong, we kind of talked about various things and various resources here. But I want to really bring us attention to 3 individuals. You want your apple? I want to turn our attention to a certain trio in the Bible that is very unique and very amazing. It's not on the Bible, kiddo. I want to talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. To really see these Jewish young men, I want us to look at a little bit of their history and what they have come through and where they are, in order to help us understand their relationship and what they're doing. Okay. First thing we need to note about these guys is that they're Jews. They were part of those that were taken into captivity to Babylon. When Babylon seized and ran over Israel and ran over Jerusalem, they really did a number. And one of the things that they did is they took all of the princes, the prestigious guys, the ones who looked well, the ones that looked really strong and healthy, and they took numerous people off into captivity. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were 3 young men amongst many that were taken into this captivity into a foreign land, which it's this foreign land, and they're living in this nation, and this nation comes up with their own gods. It comes up with their own methods and means of things, and so that's something that we got to see in here. Okay, so they're in this foreign nation, hostile to their understanding, and that has developed their own gods. Okay. Second, these 3 guys are dedicated to living for God, the Almighty, the true living Savior. Okay, these are 3 men who are dedicated to living for their God as much as they can. You feel better?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. They are trying their best to live for Him. They are their dress, their diet, everything they can, because they want to remain faithful to their God. Which, they're captive. They're out of their home. They're in a foreign, hostile nation. This nation, they want to live for God in this hostile nation, which again gives way into this third scenario here. Okay, now this third thing I want to point out here is found in opposition, and I'm trying my best to balance out all of this with a certain young man on my lap. In Daniel chapter 3, starting with verses 4, it says, "Then the herald loudly proclaimed, 'Nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do.'" Okay, so this is Babylon, A herald in Babylon comes and proclaims this. He says, "This is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." Okay. So, right there, they are living in this land, and because of their position in the nation they were overthrown from, they are in a particular area of influence. Okay, they have responsibilities and influence, and as they're living in this land, there is a demand that comes upon them, and this demand is to worship another god. Not just do they are demanded to worship this other false god, but to refuse to do so would be punishable by death. Not just any death, but being burned alive. Okay, so if they refuse to do this, they're going to be burned alive, and they're going to suffer through that. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego each had to make a choice. Their choice was, do I stand up for the truth and face fire, or do I compromise and live? Okay, so you see this dilemma. So now they're caught between a rock and a hard place, quite literally, or rather a hard place and a fireplace. They have to make a choice. Now, do I compromise? Do I bow down, say nothing, just make it look like I'm worshiping and save my life? Or do I stand for truth and face fire? And what is really telling to me in regards to these guys is that we never really see them react as individuals. Okay? There's no one portion that says, and Shadrach went and did so, or Meshach went ahead and did thus, or Abednego went out and did X, Y, and Z. We never see them operate as individuals. These three are always together, and they stand by each other. And so they are...
All done.
You're all done? Okay. So I'll put it right here, okay? And so they're never really alone. They always stand together in more ways than one. And so, given the relationship that these have with each other, given the relationship that these three have, there's something amazing here. So what they do, the relationship and the closeness that they have in their shared history, okay? They have a shared history. And so they have to make a consideration.
Daddy, apple juice.
I don't have apple juice. They have to make this consideration. Do they either live together or do they burn together? And thankfully, with this decision that they face, what we recognize and what we see in this place is that they actually get their responses recorded. And so I want to read their response. Junior, stay here, bud. So you don't want to what now? Okay. There's something on my desk. It's candy. All right. So it says right here, and we're going to start in verse 12. In verse 12, it says, "But there are some Jews," this is another person speaking to the king. Yes, you got to wait for it, okay? "But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon," and he calls them out by name, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold that you have set up." Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, so that these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is this true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up?" And so we see this question. He accuses them. And then we're going to jump to verse 16. We're going to read verse 16 right here. It says that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this manner. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. He will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. So that is a big response that they bring up and really present for us quite an amazing thing. All right. So I had to do a little bit to come back and take care of this. When they come together and they face the king, I love this because it says, they said, okay? They came together and had an agreement together, all right? They spoke up, plural. They decided together what their fate was going to be. And they went into it not even knowing if God was going to save them or not, okay? So the three of them committed without any assurance that they're going to be saved from the fire. Their commitment to God and to their own brethren besides them, they gave their strength to make the right choice. They stood together and they encouraged each other in the right place. And that's really kind of the magnitude of this that's going on. I mean, let's be honest. Peer pressure is real, right? Peer pressure is a very real thing. It never goes away. It's something that you always live with your friends, your family, your relatives, those in the community. The pressure to do certain things, even in ministers and in ministry, there can be a peer pressure from other pastors, other ministries, and it can become something very hard to deal with at times. There's even a pressure, not even just peer pressure, but even just going through life, there can be pressure to give in. That when you get tired, to give up, or to when you feel alone or overwhelmed, you can cave to certain pressures that that can come upon you. And so it is important, these things here. One of the things that makes it so important for us to recognize is that we are created beings. Okay, we are made, we are crafted. God put us together, and so we are created beings. That I honestly, in all reality, we're actually created for relationships. We're not created to be alone, and that's even more evident when we see that we go through battles of various kinds, when we go through trials of various kinds. Things that test our mettle, that test our faith, that test our resolve, and we go through those things. And honestly, that's when we really need to lean on other relationships. And so we do. We get faced with a battle, and it's this battle that becomes an all burn together or an all live together type of plan. And this is why having these kind of armor bearers beside us are so vital and important. For Christians, we live in a day and age that is growingly hostile to biblical values. Okay, we live in a day and age that is very hostile to living a Christian faith and living on biblical values. And so we see that kind of that like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where they're in an environment that was hostile to their faith. It is nearly identical, almost, depending on the country and the state in which you live. But even here in the West, it's growing more and more. That it's that hostility that they face is the same hostility that we face. That if you don't cave to this ideology, we're going to make life very, very difficult for you. You know, we might not go through a literal furnace, but we will go through an area where we are getting philosophically or even socially burned because of those conflicts and what we believe is with our faith. The consequences of living biblical values is very real all around us. And this is something we have to recognize too, that the Bible says is going to happen. It's never going to end. It's something that we are going to go through until the final days. And so it's very, very real. And so I love what these three men, and I'm going to paraphrase basically what their response was together, their corporate response. And corporate, there was three of them, but they basically said, we have committed ourselves to this path. We have committed ourselves to one another and to God. We will not compromise. And they do. They commit themselves to that, to what literally could have been their own demise. And to kind of paraphrase the story a little bit more, if you want to finish the chapter, it's Daniel chapter 3, and you see them go through the ordeal of the fiery furnace, and God shows up in a powerful way. He sends he goes to them in the fire. There it says that while they are throwing, the furnace gets heated up beyond comparison, that even the guards who threw the three men into the furnace, they burnt up and died. But the three who made it into the fire, and they don't die. They says that the king observed them walking around, and that behold, there was a fourth man in there with them. Whether Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego saw that fourth man is complete speculation, but the king recognizes that they were not alone in there. But this is something that they were going forward in. In the coming weeks, we're going to look more closely at the 12 disciples, the 12 disciples that followed Christ, and really look at that armor bearer relationship as we go forward. But one thing I want to show in regards to this is that the disciples committed themselves to a process. So did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the three of them, to use a VeggieTale term, Rack, Shack, and Benny, they, for those who maybe grew up listening to VeggieTales, they committed themselves to a pathway of pain because it was the right thing to do. And they stood by each other to do that. They committed themselves. Sometimes when it comes to us living faith and going forward in things, it's very, very common for us to only want to commit ourselves to the successes, to only commit ourselves to those things that we know are going to work out. And we avoid the failures, we avoid the disasters, we avoid those things that will make us look bad. And the real test of an armor bearer is that resolve to see it all the way through and to stand on the righteousness, to stand on the holiness of God. And even if that means the unpopular opinion. And so we see this wonderful display of brotherhood in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because these three guys stuck by one another, even going into what we will call the pathway of pain. And they did not give up on one another, and they committed themselves to the same result, and they did not compromise. And they got strength from one another in that. As believers, we need to have that same level of strength, that same camaraderie, and going on the journey together. It's such an important thing. The Bible talks about weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. And that's a really important factor that we cannot devalue that, because there's something about us coming alongside one another, encouraging one another, building one another up, because when we stand with one another, when the trials of various kinds come our way, we can stand stronger together. And that's a very important thing. The armor bearer is not just to sit there and always have great successes and the victories and by man's definitions, but rather it's about holding one another to faithfulness in Christ Jesus. And so I hope that you got a lot out of this, and let us resolve to be armor bearers that stick through to the bitter end, whatever end that might be. So I hope that you enjoyed today's study. It's a bit different. I had the little guy with me for a little bit before he decided to kind of jet out, and it was lots of fun. But I hope that you got a lot out of this. If you are in the area, we want you to join us at the church. And 10 o'clock is Sunday morning worship, and prayer is at 6. And then our midweek is on Wednesday nights, 5:30 for the dinner, and then 6:30 for our Bible study groups. If you'd like to give to the ministry of the church and to help us with our online means and all that we have going on, feel free to join us. There's a link in the description below for giving, and that'll take you to a secure giving place. And then also, if you have the church app, you can go through the give option in our church app. We appreciate you so much. Like, comment, subscribe. This helps, get more people to watch this stuff. This is all about spreading the gospel. So once again, thank you so much. God bless you, and you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Until next time, take care.